The bank said I owed $560,000 on a mortgage I never signed. Then I found out my sister had bought her dream house with my identity and my parents had helped her do it. The letter had my name on it, not junk mail, not a credit card offer. My full legal name, Claire Ann Mercer, printed in the clean, bureaucratic font of a collections notice, my date of birth, the last 4 digits of my social security number, and a mortgage balance of $560,000, 18 months delinquent, with a lender I had never heard of, for a property I had never set foot in. I was standing in my kitchen, groceries still in my arms, a bag of oranges pressing into my ribs. I read the letter 3 times before I put the groceries down because some part of my brain apparently thought that if I kept holding them, this couldn't be real. You can't receive life-altering bad news while you're still holding oranges. You can, though. It turns out you absolutely can. My hands were shaking by the time I called the number on the letterhead. A rep named Steven, calm, professional, the voice of someone who delivers catastrophic information 8 hours a day, pulled up the file in under a minute. The loan had closed 22 months ago, 18 months delinquent, a 4.2% fixed rate on a 30-year note. And the property address? I asked. He read it to me. I knew it immediately. 4447 Carmichael Drive. The house my sister Lauren had moved into 2 Christmases ago with her husband Mark and their 2 kids. The house she'd posted about obsessively on Instagram with the hashtag #FinallyHome. The house my mother had called exactly what Lauren deserved after everything she's been through. I stood in my kitchen for a long time after I hung up. The oranges were still on the counter. One of them had rolled against the dish rack. I didn't move it. I need to explain something about my family before I explain what I did next, because without context, the thing that comes next sounds impossible, and I need you to believe it. I am 36 years old. I am the older daughter. I have worked since I was 15, hostess, retail, office admin, and for the past 9 years, accounts payable manager at a mid-sized logistics company called Grayfield Freight. I make $67,000 a year. I have a 791 credit score. I built that score the way you build anything without help, slowly, carefully, one on-time payment at a time for 15 years. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment in a building that is clean, but not nice. Secondhand furniture. A couch I got from a woman on Facebook Marketplace for $40. Bills sorted by due date on the kitchen counter because I do not miss due dates. Cheap curtains I hung myself with a tension rod because I couldn't afford the installation fee. I have never asked my parents for money. Not once. Not even the year I had a $3,400 dental bill and ate rice and beans for 6 weeks. Lauren is 33. She is the younger daughter, the pretty one, the one my parents describe as free-spirited, and I would describe as never held accountable for a single consequence in her life. She has a gift for crisis, not causing it exactly, but generating a particular kind of warm, photogenic distress that makes everyone around her want to fix things. She married Mark Hensley at 26. They had 2 kids quickly. Lauren did some part-time work, a boutique, some social media consulting, but nothing consistent, nothing that built credit. The early red flags were things I'd rationalized for years. The way my mother would mention, casually, that she'd had to help Lauren out a little with something, always vague about the amount. The birthday where Lauren gave me a card without a gift, and my mother pulled me aside afterward and said, "She's going through a hard time. Don't make it a thing." The fact that Lauren had never once, in my adult memory, asked me a direct question about my life unless she needed something. I told myself this was just family. This was just how some families worked. I was wrong about what kind of wrong it was. I texted Lauren one sentence. "Why is my name on your mortgage?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, disappeared. I watched my phone for 4 minutes. Then my mother called. Not Lauren. Mom. Claire. Her voice was careful, measured, the voice she uses when she has already decided how a conversation is going to go. Don't start drama before you know the whole story. She wasn't surprised. I noticed that immediately, like a splinter noticed under skin. She was not surprised. She was already managing. Lauren was desperate, she said, with a sigh that suggested I was the unreasonable party. The bank wouldn't approve her income alone, and Mark's credit was, there were some issues. "You've always been so good with money, Claire. We thought it would be temporary, just until they could refinance." I sat down on my secondhand couch. "We?" I said. "What?" "You said we thought." "Who is we, Mom?" A pause. Not a long one. Long enough. My father picked up the extension. I didn't know they still had a landline that worked that way. It felt like receiving bad news from 1987. "Your sister has children," he said. "2 kids who need a stable home. You have yourself to worry about. Just yourself." I looked around my apartment. The tension rod curtains, the oranges on the counter. Just yourself. As if the 36 years I had spent being the stable one, the responsible one, the daughter who never needed anything. As if that was a character flaw. As if I had somehow failed my family by not requiring enough rescuing. They wanted me to stay quiet, handle it privately, call the bank, work something out, don't ruin Lauren's life over paperwork. Paperwork. $560,000. 18 months delinquent. A collections notice addressed to me. Paperwork. I told them I would think about it. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I drove to the 14th District Police Station at 8:47 a.m. I had the collections notice, 3 months of my actual credit reports printed from annualcreditreport.com, and a screenshot of Lauren's Instagram from the day she moved in. Her standing in front of 44117 Carmichael Drive with a bottle of champagne and the caption, "Home Sweet Home." Dreams really do come true. The officer at intake was a woman named Patricia Coles. I found out later she'd been with the Financial Crimes Unit for 11 years. She was compact, efficient, and she listened without expression, which I appreciated. Sympathy makes me cry. Efficiency kept me from falling apart. She took my documentation, logged the report, assigned a case number. Who had access to your personal information? She asked. Social security, date of birth, existing account numbers. I'd been dreading that question, not because I didn't know the answer, because knowing the answer out loud in an official building with a woman typing it into a computer made it permanently real. My sister, I said, and probably my parents. My voice cracked on that last word. Officer Coles looked at me, just for a second, the professionalism slipping exactly 1 millimeter, and said, "I'm sorry, that's a hard thing to say." It was. The case was assigned 2 days later to Detective Raymond Holloway of the Financial Crimes Unit. 16 years on the force, the last 7 in financial fraud. He called me from his desk at 4:15 p.m. on a Tuesday, asked methodical questions in a low, flat voice, and told me to gather everything I had, every document, every communication, every piece of evidence. "Don't warn them," he said. "Don't discuss the case. Don't tell family members what you've told us." "My mother already called me," I said. "A beat." "What did she say?" I told him. "Another beat. Longer." "Miss Mercer," he said, "I want you to understand that what you're describing, use of your identity without consent, forged signatures on financial documents, this is felony identity theft. In this state, that carries up to 10 years. I wrote down 10 years on a notepad, stared at it. "Okay," I said, "this is going to be uncomfortable. I know. It may fracture your family permanently." "Detective Holloway," I said, "they did that, not me." He was quiet for a moment. "Fair enough," he said. "I spent the following week in a specific kind of waking nightmare that doesn't have a good name. On the surface, everything was normal. I went to work. I answered emails. I ate lunch at my desk. I called my mother twice. Casual, careful, giving nothing away, because Detective Holloway had asked me to maintain contact and note anything useful. My mother, to her credit, was good at normal. She mentioned Lauren's kids, asked if I'd watched a show she liked, said my father was having knee trouble. Not once did she acknowledge the mortgage. Not once did she ask if I'd thought about it the way she'd asked me to. She had recalibrated, I understood. She had decided that if she acted as though nothing had happened, perhaps nothing would continue to happen. Meanwhile, I was getting the full picture from my credit report. I'd pulled all 3 bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, and gone through them line by line at my kitchen table with a highlighter. The mortgage was the obvious item, but it wasn't the only one. There was a credit card opened in my name 18 months ago. $11,000 maxed. A car loan, 24 months old, for a Nissan Pathfinder. $31,000. I sat with the reports for a long time. Then I called Grayfield's in-house counsel, a woman named Diane Tate, who had been my quiet professional ally for 4 years, and who, when I told her I needed a referral to a good consumer protection attorney, didn't ask why. She just said, "Margaret Osei, she's the best I know. Tell her I sent you." Margaret Osei had been in consumer and identity fraud law for 19 years. Her office was small, precise, and lined with case files organized by colored tabs. She wore reading glasses on a chain and had the demeanor of someone who had heard everything and been surprised by very little. She read through my documentation, took her time, made notes. "How many family members had access to your social security number and account data?" she asked. "My parents, at minimum. Probably my sister. Possibly her husband." "The husband? Is he cooperative?" "I don't know yet. He's complicated." Mark had always seemed like a man vaguely trapped, vaguely ashamed of the trap. I didn't know which way he'd fall. Margaret looked at me over her glasses. "Miss Mercer, this is significant exposure. We're talking about a $560,000 mortgage, potentially an additional vehicle loan, credit card fraud, the cumulative identity theft charge value alone. There may be more," I said. I told her about the credit card and the Pathfinder. She wrote something down. "We're going to file a formal identity theft affidavit with the FTC today. That starts the paper trail for credit remediation. Detective Holloway, is he running a parallel criminal investigation?" "Yes." "Good." She closed the folder. "Go to your family dinner on Saturday." I stared at her. "What?" "Your mother invited you to dinner. You told me she's acting like nothing happened. Go." She tapped her pen on the desk. "Bring nothing. Say very little. Listen to everything. If they confess anything, even partially, that's admissible." "That feels like a trap." "It is a trap," Margaret said pleasantly. "You're just the one setting it this time." Saturday dinner was pot roast. My mother had used the good plates, the cream-colored ones she only brought out for guests and holidays, which told me she understood that this was a performance and had dressed it accordingly. Lauren was already at the table when I arrived. She was wearing the expression I had seen her wear at every difficult conversation we'd ever had, a kind of soft, preemptive suffering, slightly parted lips, eyes slightly wet, the look of a woman who has learned that the faster you appear to be hurting, the faster other people stop asking questions. Mark was at the counter, not at the table. He barely looked at me when I came in. My father poured wine. We talked about nothing for 20 minutes with the specific energy of a family that has agreed, without discussing it, to pretend there is no bomb on the table. Then my mother put down her fork. "We need you to be reasonable, Claire." Lauren's eyes filled right on schedule. "I was going to fix it," she said, her voice a careful whisper. "We just needed a little more time. The plan was always to refinance once Mark got the promotion." "Lauren," I kept my voice level. "There is no promotion that refinances $560,000. We just needed a chance." Her voice cracked. The tears spilled right on cue. You have no idea what it's been like. The pressure. The kids need stability. Drop the complaint, my father said. His voice was low and firm, the voice he used when he wanted to sound like the final word. This can still be undone. You call Holloway. Tell him it was a misunderstanding, a family miscommunication. I reached into my bag. I slid the police report across the table. It landed in front of my mother. She looked at it, and then she reached for it, slowly, without surprise, the way you reach for something you have been expecting, as though she had been calculating the moment it would arrive and was simply confirming the timeline. It can't be undone, I said. Lauren's tears stopped. I don't mean they slowed. I mean they stopped, cleanly, like a faucet turned off. Her expression went flat for just a second, one unguarded second, before the wounded face reassembled itself, and then the hallway door opened. Mark walked in from wherever he'd been in the back of the house, and he looked like a man who had been sitting alone making a final decision. His face was calm in the way faces get calm when they have moved past fear into something on the other side of it. He sat down at the table. Tell her about the second loan, he said quietly. Before I do. Silence. The kind of silence that has a weight. What second loan? I said. My father said Mark's name. Sharp. Mark looked at my father with an expression I can only describe as done. Home equity line of credit, he said. $240,000. They opened it 6 months after the mortgage closed. Used the house as collateral. He reached under his chair and placed a manila folder on the table. Your name is on that one too, Claire. I looked at Lauren. She was looking at the table. I opened the folder. Applications, bank statements, forged signatures. Mine. Rendered closely enough to fool a casual eye, not closely enough to fool a forensic analyst. Emails between Lauren's email address and someone at a notary service I had never used. A notary stamp from a man named Gerald Fisk, whose license I would later learn had been flagged by the state bar 2 years prior. And then I turned a page and felt the floor shift under me. A scan. Faded. Slightly pixelated. The top portion of an old passport application. My handwriting. Filling out the form I'd completed at my parents' house 7 years ago because their printer worked and mine was broken. I had filled out that form at their kitchen table, saved it to their desktop to print, and apparently never deleted it. I looked at my mother. She looked away. Not at the wall, not at Lauren. She looked down and to the left, the direction people look when they are not denying a thing, just declining to witness their own accountability. My father was saying something. His voice had gone loud, defensive, the particular register of a man scrambling. I didn't hear the words. I was still looking at my mother. I stood up. My father moved to block the hallway before I reached it. He wasn't a large man, but he planted himself with the certainty of someone who had never had to physically enforce his authority and didn't know he'd already lost it. If you walk out with those papers, he said, you will destroy this family. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. Not physically, in some essential way. I heard you say that, I said. I want you to hear me. Are you listening? He didn't answer. You destroyed it, I said. When you decided which daughter was allowed to matter, I walked past him. Outside, in the parking lot, I sat in my Honda Civic for 45 seconds with my hands on the steering wheel and breathed. Just breathed. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the folder in my lap. My phone lit up before I'd even started the engine. Please, think of the kids. Then, Mom is having chest pains. Then, Dad says you're dead to us if you go through with this. I read them. All of them. I want to be honest about that. I didn't look away. I let each one land. Then I blocked every number. I called Detective Holloway from the parking lot. I have the folder, I said. A pause. Don't go home, he said. Come straight here. The next 3 weeks were the most exhausting of my life. Not dramatic exhausting. Administrative exhausting. The specific grinding fatigue of paperwork, phone calls, appointments, and documentation that dismantles a normal life and reassembles it into evidence. Detective Holloway's financial crimes team brought in a forensic document examiner named Carl Bresnahan, 30 years in question documents analysis, previously with the FBI field office, who spent 2 days with the mortgage applications and the HELOC paperwork and produced a 47-page report concluding that the signatures were forgeries, inconsistent with the subject's known exemplars in rhythm, pen pressure, and terminal stroke. He identified a second forged signature, different from mine, which turned out to be Mark's, on an insurance document Lauren had apparently submitted without his knowledge. That was when Mark stopped being a peripheral figure and became a witness. His attorney, a man named David Park, who I would later see described in a legal journal as one of the state's most aggressive white-collar defense lawyers, negotiated a cooperation agreement. Mark's statement ran 68 pages. It named Lauren. It named my mother, specifically, as the person who had located the passport application file. It named Gerald Fisk, the notary, who it turned out had stamped 8 fraudulent documents in the previous 3 years for a flat fee of $400 apiece. Gerald Fisk was arrested on a Thursday. He cooperated within 48 hours. I got a call from Margaret on a Friday afternoon. She told me to sit down. The DA's office has filed charges, she said. Lauren, identity theft, wire fraud, forgery, 2 counts each. Your parents, 1 count conspiracy to commit identity theft, 1 count accessory. Gerald Fisk, 4 counts notary fraud. I was sitting. I had been sitting at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd read the credit reports with a highlighter. Okay, I said. Claire. Margaret's voice was careful. Are you all right? I thought about it honestly. No, I said, but I'm going to be. The credit remediation process, in case you are ever unfortunate enough to need this information, is a special kind of bureaucratic purgatory. Margaret filed the FTC identity theft affidavit. We sent dispute packets, certified mail, return receipts, receipt. I have the green cards to Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. We notified all 3 mortgage servicers. We filed formal disputes with the auto lender and the credit card issuer. The mortgage servicer, a company called Vantage Home Lending, initially resisted. Their fraud department, led by a compliance officer named Rachel Chu, who I spoke with 4 times, told me on the second call that they could not remove a delinquency without a court order. Margaret had a court order filed within 2 weeks. On the morning I watched my credit report update, sitting at my kitchen table, laptop open, refreshing the page, the score jumped from 481, where the delinquencies had dragged it, back to 764. I sat there for a while. 764 wasn't 791, not yet. It would get there. It takes time to fully restore what someone has spent 2 years quietly destroying, but 764 felt like breathing again. I want to tell you about the courtroom, because that is where most people think the story ends. The trial, the verdict, the moment the gavel comes down. But I want to tell you about the moment before that. I was in the hallway outside courtroom 7 of the County Criminal Courts building at 9:15 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was wearing my gray blazer, the good one, the one I wore to the interview at Grayfield 9 years ago. I had my phone, my copy of the victim impact statement Margaret had helped me prepare, and a coffee I'd bought at the cart downstairs that I hadn't been able to drink. My mother and father were in the hall too, on the other side of it. I was aware of them the way you are aware of weather, present, affecting the atmosphere, not requiring engagement. My mother looked smaller, not the way my father had looked small in the hallway, not diminished by guilt, just physically reduced, like the last few months had used something up. She looked at me once, a long look. I held it. I didn't look away, but I didn't fill the silence either. There is nothing she could have said that I needed to hear. Inside, when the judge asked if I wanted to speak, I stood. I had practiced the statement 12 times, out loud, in my apartment, to the tension rod curtains. I had cut it down from 3 pages to 1. Margaret had told me, specific, clear, no extra words. Judges don't need your emotions. They need to understand what was taken. I said, my name was the only thing I owned completely. My credit, my history, my financial identity. I built it over 15 years, alone, without help, because I was the daughter in this family who was not allowed to need help. They used my name because they knew I would be good for it. They used it without asking because they assumed that love meant I would absorb the damage quietly. I am here to tell this court, and to tell my family who is in this room, that love without accountability is just another word for the permission to keep hurting someone. My mother was crying behind me. I could hear it. I did not turn around. I sat down. Margaret put her hand briefly on my forearm. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Lauren was called. She stood. The wounded expression was there. It's always there. It's structural at this point. It lives in her face. But something underneath it had shifted. She looked like a woman who has been running towards something for a long time, and has finally, at the last possible moment, glimpsed what it is. Her attorney leaned over, whispered something. Lauren's face went white. Not pale. White. The color of paper. The color of a credit report. I found out afterward what the attorney had told her. Mark's cooperation agreement had included one detail that Lauren's own attorney hadn't been fully briefed on until that morning. The emails between Lauren and Gerald Fisk included a chain, forwarded from my mother's email address, that contained a scanned copy of not just my passport application, but my parents' own tax returns, and a note from my mother that read, use whatever you need. Just don't let her find out. My mother had written that. Just don't let her find out. Lauren stood at that podium for a long moment. Her attorney whispered again, and then Lauren said 3 words. I plead guilty. Epilogue, 8 months later. Lauren received 22 months probation, 200 hours community service, and a restitution order of $800,000, the combined value of the mortgage delinquency damage, the HELOC, the credit card, and legal fees. She and Mark are separated. She moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in her parents' zip code. I don't know the address. My parents received 12 months probation each and a joint fine of $45,000. My father retired early. My mother took a part-time job at a garden center, which I know only because a mutual acquaintance told me. I did not ask. Gerald Fisk lost his notary license and pled guilty to 4 counts of fraud. He received 18 months probation and is barred from handling any notarized documents in the state permanently. My credit score is 803. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment 6 months ago. It is in a building that is not just clean, but nice. The curtains are real curtains, hung with a proper rod, installed by someone I paid to do it correctly. There is a 2nd bedroom that I use as an office. There is a voicemail on my phone from my mother, left 3 months ago, that I have not listened to and may never listen to. I haven't deleted it either. I'm not sure what that means. I think it means I'm still deciding. Mark sent me a card. Just a card. No letter. It said, I should have said something sooner. I'm sorry I didn't. I hope you're okay. I wrote back, I'm okay. Thank you for the folder. I meant it. I think about the passport application sometimes. The one I filled out at my parents' kitchen table 7 years ago on a Tuesday afternoon because their printer worked. I remember leaving the house that day, getting into my car, not thinking twice about the file on their desktop. I had trusted them with something small and ordinary and completely mine, and they had kept it, waiting. I don't think about it with anger anymore. I think about it with the specific clarity that comes when you finally understand the terms of a relationship that was always conditional. You just didn't know what the condition was. The condition was silence. I didn't meet it. That is the only part of this story I would not change.